A dog named Ducky walked across a shelter room and chose a complete stranger. Not a trainer, not a volunteer, a random person who had never been to that shelter before. And 8.7 million people watched it happen. Here is why that moment changed how we think about dog adoption forever. There is a shelter in Pennsylvania called the Humane Society of Berks County, and a few years ago, they quietly started doing something that most shelters considered impossible. Instead of matching dogs to people using checklists and questionnaires, lifestyle compatibility, yard size, activity level, they started letting the dogs make the first move. They called it a free choice meet. No leashes during introductions, no staff steering the interaction, just a person, a room, and whatever happens next. And what happened next with a scruffy little mixed breed named Ducky broke the internet. But before we get to Ducky, and we are absolutely getting to Ducky, there is something you need to understand about how animal shelters have worked for decades, because it makes what this Pennsylvania shelter did feel almost radical. For most of modern shelter history, the adoption process has been almost entirely human-driven. A family walks in, staff asks questions, they review a profile, they pick a dog based on size, breed, energy level, age. The dog waits in its kennel. It has no say, it has no vote. It just waits and hopes someone picks it. Millions of dogs have lived that way. Millions have died that way, without ever getting chosen. Now here is something that will stick with you. Dogs are extraordinarily good at reading human emotion. Studies from the University of Lincoln in the UK found that dogs can process human facial expressions and tone of voice simultaneously, the same way we process other humans. They are not just responding to commands. They are reading you. Your stress, your grief, your openness, your hesitation. They know things about us that we have not said out loud yet, which raises a genuinely strange question. What if the dog actually knows who they belong with better than the human does? That is exactly the question the Berks County shelter started taking seriously. Here is how the free choice meet actually works. A potential adopter enters a neutral room, not the kennel area, which carries its own stress and smell and noise. The dog is brought in, leash removed, and then everyone just waits. Staff observe from behind a window. No prompting, no calling the dog over, no encouraging words. If the dog approaches, great. If the dog hides in the corner and trembles, that tells you something too. What they were looking for was genuine, uninstructed connection. A dog choosing to be near someone, not because it was trained to, not because it smelled food in a pocket, but because something in that room felt right. And now here is the part that gets us every time. Ducky came to the Berks County shelter as a stray. Nobody knew his full story.
He was scrappy looking, medium-sized, with ears that could not agree on a direction. He had been passed over multiple times. Visitors would come in, see him, and move on to the next kennel. Ducky was getting close to the end of his stay. And then, one afternoon, a man named Marcus came in. Not even sure he wanted a dog that day, honestly. Just tagging along with a friend who was looking. Marcus had been going through a hard season. Job loss, a difficult year. He was not in the market for a new responsibility. He was just there. They brought Ducky into the room. Ducky walked in, sniffed the air, ignored the friend completely, walked past two shelter staff members standing near the door, crossed the entire room, and sat down directly on Marcus's feet. Not beside him, on his feet, and looked up. Marcus said later that he did not know what to do. He just started crying, and Ducky stayed right there. Someone had a camera. The video went up. Within 4 days, 8.7 million views. Comment after comment from people saying some version of the same thing. He knew. The dog knew. And you know what? Science actually backs that up. Researchers studying dog-human bonding have found that oxytocin, the same hormone released between mothers and newborns, spikes in both dogs and humans during sustained eye contact and physical closeness. The bond that forms is not metaphorical. It is biological. Ducky was not performing. Something real was happening in that room. Marcus adopted Ducky that same day. Of course he did. But here is what makes this story bigger than just one dog and one man. Because what Berks County did quietly, other shelters started paying attention to. Programs inspired by this approach have now been piloted at shelters in Oregon, Texas, and parts of Canada. Early data from these programs show something remarkable. Adoption returns, dogs brought back to shelters after the family decides it is not working out, dropped significantly in programs where dogs had some degree of free choice interaction. That is not a small thing. Return dogs face a dramatically higher risk of euthanasia. What this model might be doing in a very real way is saving lives. And there is another layer here that keeps nagging at us. Think about all the dogs sitting in kennels right now who never got a fair shot at connection. Not because they were not the right dog, but because the system never gave them a chance to show it. Ducky was almost one of those dogs. Almost. The free choice model does not work perfectly for every dog. Dogs with severe anxiety or trauma need different support. This is not a magic fix. But as an idea, the idea that maybe the dog has something to tell us about who they belong with, it's hard to argue with 8.7 million people who felt it in their chest when they watched Ducky cross that room. Marcus posted an update 6 months after the adoption. Ducky sleeps on his feet every single night, has since day one. Old habits.
If you have ever been chosen by an animal, a cat that only ever liked you, a dog that pressed against your leg during your worst week, you already know what this story is really about. It is not about dogs being smart, although they are. It is not about a viral video, although the world needed that video. It is about the way living things recognize each other. The way that sometimes, across a room, something just clicks into place. Ducky knew, and now Marcus knows too. So here is what we want to know from you. Have you ever had an animal choose you? Not the other way around, not you picking the pet, but the pet picking you? Drop it in the comments. We read every single one, and some of your stories have become our favorite videos on this channel. If Ducky's story hit you somewhere real today, hit the like button. It genuinely helps us find and share more moments like this one. And if you are new here and this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe. We'll be right here with another one.